Okay, so let's begin talking about some of the characteristics of the disorder. We can talk a little bit about the prevalence, incidence of the disorder, what common symptoms are, just to give us a sense of how the disorder is defined. So as I begin to talk about this, I'd like to talk a little bit about what's been referred to as the Mona Lisa of asylum art. And the Mona Lisa of asylum art are a series of paintings that were completed by a artist by the name of Louis Wain. Louis Wain was popular in the late 1800s, early 1900s in Great Britain. Louis Wain was an illustrator, and he started by illustrating a variety of different persons and objects. But then beginning around 1896, he started painting what are called anthropomorphized cats. And if you look at these slides, you'll see the examples of these anthropomorphized cats. He liked actually hanging out in cafes, watching people interact, seeing the clothes that they wore, and then actually recreating those appearances, but in the form of cats, typically standing upright with very large eyes. These paintings of cats, drawings of cats, became extremely popular in England in the early 1900s. And in fact, they gained popularity in the US as well. Louis Wain took a trip to the US where the Hearst magazine chain became very interested in his drawings, wanted to include them. So he became very, very famous as a result of these drawings. At the same time, though, in his 20s and 30s, he started developing some unusual symptoms. He had some examples of what are called delusions, that is irrational beliefs, ideas. This was at the advent of the movie theater, right? The silent movies. And it was reported that he was in a movie theater and actually felt that electricity from the movie was actually being placed into his brain. He had a delusion that electricity was being placed directly from the movie into his brain, and he had to leave the theater. He had some acts of violence, and because of this behavioral agitation that he displayed, he was eventually committed to a psychiatric hospital. The psychiatric hospital he was committed to was a paupers unit of the hospital and was pretty restricted in terms of his access to general activities of daily life. And he was so popular as a painter that the great writer H.G. Wells actually intervened to move him from his original place of treatment and move him over to Bethlehem Hospital in London, which at that time in South London, Southwark, which at that time was the most impressive of the psychiatric hospitals in London. Why Louis Wain is important, though, is that there is some thought that he may have suffered from schizophrenia. Now, there's back and forth in the literature, and some people actually have argued that he might have had Asperger's syndrome. It's unclear, but nonetheless, the symptoms he showed would be consistent in many cases with what we now think of as schizophrenia. As part of his disorder, he became more erratic in his behavior, he developed delusions, and his paintings similarly started exhibiting some unusual signs. So if you look at some of his other paintings, as his illness developed, we can see the development of very large eyes on his cats that could perhaps suggest something about paranoia. And in other drawings, he makes cats that are almost hard to recognize. It looks like almost the actual visual sort of perception of cat for him has broken down. And this illustrates a couple important points about the disorder of schizophrenia. Number one, it illustrates very clearly that the disorder tends to oscillate. You tend to have severe symptoms followed by periods of relative quiescence where there are very few symptoms, then the symptoms reemerge. And the visual perceptual distortions we see in these drawings might suggest some cognitive dysfunction in Mr. Wain. And cognitive dysfunction is a highly characteristic aspect of people with schizophrenia. That is an inability to perceive things in the environment, to remember things, to pay attention. So he may have been exhibiting those symptoms as well.